Alright, first up, here's our top story. For some time now, the future of Test cricket and ODIs for that matter has been the topic of large discussions. Is T20 cricket and its absolutely immense popularity going to dwarf the older and longer formats? Are domestic T20 leagues like the IPL and the Big Bash far more attractive for players? Well, now a survey conducted by FICA has thrown up some rather startling figures. Now, FICA, remember, is the Federation of International Cricketers Associations. Now, according to the results of the survey, about 52% of the cricketers surveyed would want to become T20 free agents, a lot like a number of West Indian cricketers who have gone down the same path. In other words, more than half of the players surveyed picked T20 domestic leagues over national contracts. Now, remember, players from India, Pakistan and Zimbabwe were not part of this survey, simply because these countries don't have player associations, though that might of course change in India after the Lodha panel recommendations. So is this then a huge wake-up call for the International Cricket Council or the ICC? Also, are tests and ODIs then bordering on extinction? Is there a massive exodus on the cards as far as players choosing to become T20 free agents is concerned? Now consider this, up to 70% of the players surveyed want clear-cut windows in the cricket calendar for domestic T20 leagues like the IPL and the Big Bash in Australia. Up to 75% of them want a lesser pay gap between T20 leagues and international cricket. And that brings us to the big question that we are asking today. Is there currently a massive conflict between international cricket and domestic T20 leagues? Alright, let's bring in our guests for this evening into the show. Mr. Tony Irish and Akash Chopra currently on with us. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Good evening to both of you. Mr. Irish, if I could quickly begin with you first. 52%, I have to say, is a staggering figure. Did FICA expect a statistic like this? Also, how big an indication is it of how much the cricket landscape has now changed?
Yes, I think it is a staggering figure. We've been projecting that this trend is going to happen for quite some time now because of the disparity between what players get paid to play in T20 leagues and what players, especially in the smaller countries, earn to play international cricket. And this is a trend that is on the increase. So, I would expect that if we, would survey the players again in the future, that percentage is going to grow. But I do think that there are some solutions to this, to reverse that trend. And those really lie in, the restructuring of international cricket to make it more attractive to players.
Right, of course, the times they are changing, Mr. Irish. So let me ask this question to you in another way. How big is the conflict between international cricket and domestic T20 cricket leagues currently, according to you?
Let me say at the outset in answering that question that we believe that T20 cricket leagues like the IPL, the Big Bash, the CPL, etc., are very good for the game. They're good for the players, they're good for the game. It's what the fans want to see. However, international cricket has not kept pace with, I think, the changing times. So there is a big conflict between playing international cricket and playing in the T20 leagues, in particular for the smaller countries. And that's driven by the wage gap in what you can earn to play in the T20 leagues as opposed to international cricket. And it's also driven by the attractiveness or the decreasing attractiveness of international cricket because much of the cricket is lacks context and it's it's unregulated. There's no framework. A lot of it is played in front of smaller crowds, or the crowds are dwindling. And this is exactly the opposite to what is happening in the T20 leagues, where you play again in front of big crowds. There's context because it's played in a league structure.
All right. So, Mr. Irish, they're saying that a lot of the cricket that is being played currently internationally is unregulated. It lacks context. Let's bring in Akash Chopra into the discussion now. Akash, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. First up, you heard what Mr. Irish had to say, and the 52% figure. Are you surprised by that figure? And if not, why?
I'm not surprised for a simple reason that firstly Indian cricketers were not involved. So if they were involved, obviously that figure might just drop down a little because they are happy to play international cricket as well because they're remunerated well. See, eventually Akash, it boils down to how much you're being paid. Yes, it sounds a little crass and maybe slightly more money minded, but that's how it is. What brings food to your table? A test match, and we're not even talking about small teams. We're talking about, say, South Africa, or #1 test side not too long ago. Their test players earn about $3,000 to $4,000 a game, and 100 times more you can earn in a season of the IPL. So an AB de Villiers might be earning actually 200 times more. So that's the disparity. If disparity is that huge and a cricketer comes with a small shelf life, and if he doesn't really make the most of the time that he has at the top, he will be actually left to his own devices, and that's what you don't want. And that's why I'm not surprised one bit that if given a choice, everybody would want to be a part of the T20 leagues. Yes, you want to play international cricket as well, but not at the cost of saying no to T20 cricket.
All right, so Akash Chopra, they're saying that he's not really surprised by the figures that this particular survey has thrown up. We also have another former India cricketer, Atul Wasan, joining us now. Atul, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Would you say that the current cricket structure globally needs a massive shake-up? What does the ICC do? Where do they go from here?
Well, I think the rot started when the skewed payments were started in IPL. It was a bonanza for cricketers. You can't blame it. So actually, ICC promoted this mercenary culture by rewarding players for instance, Ishan Sharma or a bowler gets $1 million. So you bowl about 50 overs for $1 million, how much that works out to be for 1 over. In a test match, you got to bowl 22 overs a day and you got to keep yourself fit and all. So that's why people will cry off and, it's easy money. So you should have kept a balance where, obviously if you ask a cricketer, he has to make his name in test cricket. I would rate a cricketer and respect somebody who is a good test player, whose test record is there. T20 is a good T20 player cannot be a good test player. A good test player can be a good T20 player. So I think this skewed payment system has actually thrown this whole cricketing revenue stream out for a toss. And I think something has to be done drastically because all the top players, and you can't blame them for being selfish. There is a reward and name and glory at one side and your livelihood on one side. And I don't blame any cricketer who are opting out of tough cricket to make easy money.
Absolutely, and that too in very quick time because T20 cricket does not, take a toll on one's body as much as say Test or ODI cricket does. Akash, going back to the point that you raised about the money and how money, of course, changes everything. How do you deal with the difference in money on offer as far as different boards are concerned? Because when you look at, say, a board like England or Australia, their cricketers get almost 3 times the money that a South African cricketer gets. So how do you go ahead and form this level playing field?
You can't really form a level playing field by just by a magic wand. It's not possible. So you have to find windows, I think, for the T20 leagues, recognize them because they are there. You may want to hate them, dislike them, but they're not going anywhere. IPL, the BBL, the CPL. So if you can find 3 windows for 3 leagues, see, others have flittered away. Let's not discount the fact that BPL, the Bangladesh Premier League, has lost its relevance. Sri Lankan Premier League lasted only a year, and Ram Slam is not really at par with any T20 league in the world. So there are at this point in time only 3 T20 leagues that are worth their while. So find a window for them, allow everybody to play in them, and then make international cricket with context and have some contests because you can't really have a 7-match bilateral one-day series where the team itself forgets what happened in the first and the second ODI, let alone the spectators or the broadcasters.
Absolutely. Now, since we're talking about this survey which really sparked off this entire debate, let's go back to Mr. Tony Irish for more on this and find out exactly how big a reflection this is on the entire game of cricket and all the players who play cricket. Mr. Irish, this survey, of course, did not include players from India, Pakistan and Zimbabwe because these countries don't have player associations. But you would say that it's still perhaps symbolic of what most cricketers want, and is FICA expecting more of an exodus really towards T20 leagues in the future like we have seen with West Indian cricketers?
Yes, to answer your first question, I think it is reflective of most cricketers. We'd dearly like to have the Indian cricketers as part of FICA and to have a players' association, and hopefully that will happen given the LODA recommendations. But I think it is reflective, and to answer your second question, this trend will continue, we believe, unless they address the structure of international cricket, and those discussions are going on at the moment. But I think it's very important that the international cricket structure is addressed in order to make it more attractive for players.
Right, Atul, you heard what Mr. Irish had to say. In your opinion, will more and more cricketers, and I'm not talking about the big stars here, but more and more cricketers who regularly play the game, perhaps will they opt for early retirement and play in these T20 leagues and become pretty much free agents?
Yes, we are seeing that already. A lot of players on the cusp of their career, they reckon they can prolong their T20 careers by a few seasons by just cutting down on the hard yards they have to put in to be a test player. And test cricket, 1 or 2 series go bad and you're out. So I think self-preservation is everybody's right, and it's a human nature. And I think let's take example of Chris Gayle. People say that money is not everything in life, but unless you have money, never entertain this thought. It's an altruistic thought. So unless you have money, never say money is not everything. Chris Gayle, he's not bothered. He's not playing test cricket, one-day cricket. If he at the end of his career he makes $20 million. His life is set. He might not have the record of 100 test matches. Who's going to remember that? At least his generations will be taken care of. So I can't blame the players. It is cricket administration to be blamed for this disproportional rewarding system which they have actually there, and they can't stop it. And they can't stop the leagues also coming. It's like the nuclear proliferation treaty. Nuclear powers now stop other countries having nuclear assets. So if India had the IPL and it was successful, India can't stop other people having their own leagues. So it's a domino effect. It started. Who's gonna stem the rot? The jury is still out.
Right, but the big question, of course, is, you can't blame the players, but the question is what happens to the formats. Let's go back to Mr. Irish for one final word. Mr. Irish, according to you, realistically, is there a future really for Test cricket and, for that matter, ODI cricket?
Yes, I think there is a future for it. I think that a lot of people still love Test cricket, and certainly amongst the players, players still value Test cricket. I think it's a very respected format. It's the format that tests the players most of all. So I think that there is a market for it, and I think certainly the players would like to see it being played. But it needs to be structured properly within the overall structure of the game.
All right, just enough time left to squeeze in one more question. Akash, I wanted to come to you for that one. As things are progressing, a lot of people, of course, are speculating over whether one of the 3 formats will fall sometime in the future. And perhaps the one format that everyone is looking at are the ODIs. Because Test cricket, of course, still a lot of players want to play. T20s is here to stay. There's no debate about that. Do you think that perhaps the first casualty will be the ODIs? Will we have bilateral series in the future, which will consist of Tests and T20 cricket?
I won't be surprised. In fact, I am also of the same opinion that ODI might just get the knife or the sword first up, because it is losing context. There is it's a condensed or T20 is a condensed 50-over game. So that's popular. Test match obviously has its own character. One day is just falling in between, has no character of its own anymore. You've got 20 or 25 overs of predictable play in every innings, let alone every match. So it is going to be a difficult format that to survive, and I won't be surprised if one day cricket actually gets the boot. But test match cricket is here to stay. It has stayed for 150 odd years. It will continue to stay because even the top T20 cricketers in the world, Akash, are quality test match cricketers. Even the Chris Gayle that Atul mentioned has got 2 triple centuries in test match cricket. So you obviously know that these guys will stay in great shape, will continue to blossom in T20 leagues as long as they're doing well in test cricket as well.
All right, so clearly the ICC and the home boards have their task cut out. They will have to come up with a blueprint to perhaps change the situation, because like Mr. Irish had mentioned earlier in an article that I was reading, the current structure of international cricket perhaps is not serving the game globally. I would like to thank all our guests this evening for joining us. Akash Chopra, Atul Wasan, Mr. Tony Irish. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Looking forward to having you again here. All right, that's all the sports news I have for you for now. Up next, all the entertainment news.